Into the auditorium, the gymnasium, please, and grab a seat. I also want to thank Amy from Carl again for that presentation. Thank you so much, Amy. And wanted to remind everyone that to ensure that everyone gets access, the mobile clinic is handicap accessible. All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn this over to my friend who from 100 Black Men, the recently recognized as Humanitarian of the Year, right? So justly deserved. Tony Jones, who's representing the 100 Black Men, he is going to facilitate this panel, and I will also turn over the mic to him to introduce our esteemed guests, who will also share a little bit about their background. But this is a topic that is much needed in our community in terms of mental health and wellness, and so all of you are going to be in for some, it's going to be a real good conversation we're going to have this afternoon. So I'll turn it over to Tony. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, thank you so much, Renee. And this is a conversation that I'm very happy to see continue. A few weeks ago, I was actually had the opportunity to be a facilitator for a panel that's very similar to this. This was on behavioral health concerns for Black men, and actually we had individuals talk about that particular topic with some prepared questions. And actually I see at least one person that was in attendance for that particular event there. But today we're talking about mental health and having a conversation, and we have two experts on that particular topic. First, I'd like to introduce cheerleader in the audience here.
Thank you, cheerleader.
Courtney Croston. Did I pronounce your name correct?
Courtney Croston.
Oh, okay, because I always have saying Courtney, but I know I was doing that incorrectly. And Faye Freeman Smith, who is from not very far from my hometown. She's from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'm from Richmond. We're 100 miles apart. So I've met Courtney this summer, and I've known Faye for years. So at this time, I'm going to ask each of you to just tell us a little bit about yourself as your introduction.
These things always feel so loud. My name is Courtney Crosson. I am born and raised here in Bloomington, an extreme townie. I have a practice called the Healing Collective downtown Bloomington on East Front Street, where I work as a somatic body worker and a trauma practitioner. So that's a lot. It's a combination of a lot of things. I'm a licensed massage therapist, a trauma-informed yoga instructor, a Reiki practitioner, and a somatic experiencing practitioner. So I take all of those things and use them individually and in groups to help people learn how to stay embodied and to heal their trauma while being present and connected versus, all the other things that happen to us. I've been in practice for 10 years next year. I've been doing trauma-specific work for the past 5, since probably 2018. And I'm really passionate about the thing that happens when we have oppressive systems and how that creates trauma and how it affects our bodies. So that, how those things all interact with each other that create trauma for us is really what I'm focused on in my passion. And then community engagement is the other thing, because I don't think there's any healing without community. So.
And I'm Faith Freeman Smith, and I'm happy to say that I'm Emeritus Administrator from Heartland Community College as of April 2023, 21 years at Heartland. I created Heartland's Counseling Center, so I thought if I can create theirs, then I can create my own. So I created Counseling Resource Institute, And my current address, I just moved off of Washington Street to downtown Bloomington, so we're both downtown. And I'm in the Illinois house, and my brochures are here. So I've been in private practice for about 8 years. I have a master's degree in community mental health and administration and counseling, and a bachelor's degree in psychology. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor here in Illinois, and board certified telemental health counselor, and an approved clinical supervisor. So that means that I can supervise other counselors, which I have done, as well as being a consultant in the field. I also collaborate with the LAP program in Illinois. That's a state organization for lawyers. This is the Lawyers Assistance Program. So I offer mental health and counseling for judges, lawyers, law students, do some of their trainings. My scope of practice includes individual and group therapy, both face-to-face and online and on phone. I've also done email counseling, but that's no longer needed, or people don't want it that much. So my focus is on anxiety, stress, trauma. I'm finishing up my training for EMDR training. In fact, I consulted for EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, that resolves trauma. And my consultant and it was a 2-year process, so I'm at the end of it. He's in Israel right now. So he is Israeli, that's where he's from. And we're helping each other manage trauma with what's going on in Israel. And I do grief and addictions counseling. I was a drug and alcohol counselor for the U.S. Army civilian, do relapse. And also my focus is trifold. I believe in physical, mental, and spiritual, some holistic. And I'm trying to get this back to where it was, holistic. So when you come to see me and I do the assessments, it's looking at you physically. So my assessments include a questionnaire about how you are physical, what's going on mentally, and what's going on spiritually, because all of those work together. I'm also the president of the Illinois Council on Problem Gambling, which is a state organization. We are really ramping up in Illinois because of internet gambling. In 2019, the state approved land-based casinos. And that was on a Sunday night while no one was in the gallery, so they could do that. And so do education and prevention information on gambling. And I've been volunteering in Bloomington Normal for over 30 years. Tony and I met, we're founders of Black Business Alliance. I'm a past president, helped found the Multicultural Leadership Program here in Bloomington, Illinois. Served on the advisory boards at Lincoln Christian University, the Mental Health Advisory Board for McLean County, and Boys and Girls Club, etc. Plains Life, Great Plains Life Foundation, Extension in Illinois, and helped with found the first African American radio station, WXRJ. Been a Women of Distinction for YWCA, and the first Servant Leader Award for Multicultural Leadership Program. So I'm happy to be here today. I love this discussion about mental health, passionate about it, so please join in with us and ask the questions that you need. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, both of you. Yeah, those of you know me, I'm technical and I'm just kind of fascinated. Faith taught me something new with the microphone that actually just can sit there and pick up on things there. So Faith's invention there. Yeah, so we want to start off the conversation by level setting a little bit here. So the question that I have for you, from your perspective, and it's a two-part question, what is mental health and what is mental illness? So what is mental health and what is mental illness?
So mental health is the ability to be able to cope with life's ups and downs. Because everybody have life's ups and downs. So you probably had some sadness in your life, happiness in your life, but it takes coping to get through that. And so it's applying that function and ability to be able to ride the waves, and even if they're huge. For me, mental illness is the inability to do that. And it's just like a physical illness. You're not able to ride those ups and downs as well, and it's different ways or different methods that it'll manifest, like depression, depending on how you were raised and what your gene makeup and et cetera. You may have some precursors of, physical things. That's why we look at the physical. You may have some brain chemistry problems, et cetera, that kind of manifest when life gets you really bad. So mental health to me is mental wellness, being able to cope through. And mental illness is just like any other physical illness, the inability to be able to do that.
I would agree. And just to add to it, I think that to me, mental health is the ability to access and recognize how your emotions are showing up, and then being able to respond in a way that feels in alignment to who you are as a person. And when you're not able to do that, when you show up in a way you're like, who was that? What just happened? Right? When you're not really in connection with what's happening internally and how it's expressing itself externally, I think that's where the illness comes in.
Okay, thanks for those definitions or insights there. Kind of have a companion question. What is social stigma, and how does it apply to mental health?
Social stigma around mental health. Well, when I was looking, I don't want to jump ahead on your questions, but when I was looking at it earlier, there's a section talking about physical versus mental health and how we engage with those. And I really think that the stigma is that we can't see mental health all the time. Not everyone is a schizophrenic person who is doing something that you consider obscene on a corner, right? And sometimes it's a really internal struggle and something that you're going through seemingly on your own. And it's hard to pick up when you're a functioning human being going about their day-to-day life. And so the stigma, I think, is if you can't see it, it can't be that bad. And I don't believe that to be true. And in fact, I think it's probably the exact opposite for a lot of people. If you don't see it, I'm doing a really good job of holding it so far down that it's not noticeable. And it could be even more dire. And I think that we have a tendency to turn away from things that make us uncomfortable and that activate something in ourselves. And so if we see someone who is presenting in a way that doesn't feel normal or feels slightly threatening or uncomfortable to us, we're going to turn away from it. And so it becomes an othering of people who are experiencing stuff versus a connection opportunity.
So a stigma is a disapproval or discrimination against an individual or group. And the funny thing about it is we need discrimination. Our brains are made to discriminate. If it didn't, you'll be in a lot of trouble. So if the red light is red, and you couldn't discriminate against teaching your brain that it's red and I'm supposed to stop, you'll be in a lot of trouble. So we all discriminate, okay? That's right. And it's how you do it and to the extent that you do it that causes the problem and who you discriminate against. So discrimination is good, but we need that in order to navigate our environment. So stigma then comes from discrimination. Because discrimination, when you discriminate, is a part of eliciting that fear pathway in our brain to warn you that it's trouble. And so when you are behind a stigma is fear. And so that's what's going on. You're trying to navigate from in order to maintain the norm. So in mental health, what we've done in our society is stigmatize mental health, that there's some fear behind it. It's a history of fear behind mental health. put them in institutions. We stopped that. Now they're on the streets. Now we're putting them in jail. But there's a discrimination piece that happens, and it's because our brains are saying, and we've learned through media, information gain, negative information, or viewing people, that that's not good. So we discriminate, and then we create this whole culture around the discrimination that give us navigation rules. Don't do this with someone who's psychotic. Be careful if you have a person that's bipolar. Alcoholics are like such and such. So we create these rules around trying to make sure we navigate safely, and that's stigma. And so we all have stigma in different places, but I feel like in this culture, we are stigmatized twice because we're African American and if you have a mental health problem. So.
Okay. The next question that we have is actually, as I looked at it, relates to something that I experienced this past Monday. I had my annual medical exam, and when I was filling out the information, they asked the typical questions that I was expecting, like, do you have a nagging cough? How long have you had it? Those types of things. But it were like a series of 20 questions that kind of probed into my mental, as far as like, are you sad? How often are you sad? And things of that nature there. So the question that we have for you next is, how does society view mental and physical health differently? And also, and part two of that is, do you think it should be addressed in the same manner? Why not?
Let me go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I think historically we viewed it different. And we've been taught in our society to view it different because we have an eye doctor, a nose doctor. So we split ourselves when actually it's the same. So how you think is going to be how you feel. And if you continue to think a certain way, a negative, in fact, researchers say we have 70,000 to 100,000 thoughts a day. That's normal for a normal person. If you're a worrier, it's more, okay? And they say that 80% of those thoughts are negative. And I'm a Christian, so I say that's the result of a fallen world. Okay, and we're living in this world, and we get negative messages all the time, okay? So if you get those negative messages, you're going to start thinking a certain way, and when you think a certain way, it becomes a belief. I know this is true, and you can't move people away from a lie if they believe it. It's because they've had those negative messages. And so once you believe it, then you're going to act on it. And so once you act on it, it becomes your characteristic, and it affects the physical. Once you're going down that line, then you develop heart disease, diabetes, if you're thinking negatively about how you eat, etc. So it comes in a dual. Your mental does affect your physical. Even, did you know if you're low in potassium, you could be depressed? And so that's why we have to look at all of those. That's why, Tony, you got that survey at the doctor's office, because they're starting to look at how that cross over. And even though we have to go to different doctors and stuff, they're saying, look at the mental. And my doctor, I interviewed him, and when I got my doctor, I interviewed him. I did a questionnaire. I said, if you can interview me if you want me as a patient, but I'm going to interview you as your doctor. So that was our first session. And the first thing, I went down my list, and the last thing I said, okay, if I was incapacitated and not able to care for myself or speak for myself, will you pray for me? And he said, sure, Faye, I would. I said, okay, you're my doctor. Because all of that connects. So make sure you're looking at that in a different way. And by the way, he prays every time I go visit. We do our visit and begin it in prayer. So, good doctor.
So kudos for your self-advocation, which I think people need to be better about advocating for what they need when they see professionals. Obviously, I love the way that mental health and physical health intersect, because that's what I do. And people come to me a lot of times as a last resort. A lot of my new clients have a chronic back issue, or a client yesterday, which I asked her permission, I was like, this is really interesting. She has chronic TMJ, or tight jaws, right? Lots of migraines from it, all these things. And we were talking yesterday, and spiders came up, right? Spooky season, Halloween, etc. And she's like, I remember when I was young and my friend's dad had told me that if I didn't keep my mouth closed when I slept, a spider would crawl in, right? And he was being playful. He wasn't trying to be malicious. She's like, and ever since then, I clenched my jaw so hard when I sleep that she has started to grind her own teeth down. But who puts that together? When you go to see the doctor, like, oh, you have TMJ, you need to see a dentist, this is what's going on, but has no idea that that's a threat response from the time that she was young, right? It's something that wasn't traumatic. It was just something said in passing, jokingly, that she has held on to into her 30s that has caused chronic pain. So when you think about the way that mental health shows up, it does come to our bodies. Our bodies are the first thing to notice something's going on, which is why you can walk into a room when two people just got into an argument, and they may not be talking, you're like, something just went down here, right? You can sense it. Even if you can't put your finger on why something's off, you can feel when something is off. And we disregard that so often, but that's our body saying something's going on. And so the same thing happens with mental health. When you're thinking things, like Faye said, that can show up in your body. But also our bodies are our first alert system. Right. It notices something's off, and then our brain says, well, let me find what the threat is. Let me figure out what the story is here. Which is why sometimes things become adaptive, right? We think that, someone jumps out from behind a wall when you're young, and then now every time you can't walk into a room without turning on all the lights and looking around every corner, right? But you become, you start noticing these patterns that you have. And so, like Faye, I wish that all of it was considered under the same umbrella. When you go into a doctor, when you go, I wish you could walk into an ER with a broken arm, or something's going on mentally, I need some help, I need to talk to somebody. And have the same access, right? Because we all need that kind of support. But so often you go to the doctor and you have something going on in your belly, and you know what's happening, but they don't know how you've been eating, they don't know what your stress level's like, what your support system is, what your work is like, what's taking your sleep away, right? They don't pay attention to all the other things that can be happening. So I think it's all deeply, deeply connected, and I see it every single day.
Yeah, thanks for those insights. It also, helps explain, the questions that I was getting when I went for my medical annual exam. They were kind of probing into my mindset, my mental health, because as you all both said, it definitely can impact your physical. So, very good insights on that. One of the things I mentioned at the start of this is that I had the opportunity to be the moderator or facilitator for a recent mental health event for Black men. And I won't share the individual's name, but one of the things they mentioned is that they took advantage of resources that their employer provided. And one thing they mentioned was that they used resources, but no one that worked with them, their manager or anyone, knew that they utilized those services here. So the next question that we have here is, would you be cautious about sharing a mental health issue with a potential employer? Why or why not?
Go ahead.
So I would be, because I would be cautious. It's none of their business, okay? Unless it's affecting the workplace and your ability to do your job. So unless you're in the military, they're gonna know anyway, but they say they don't know. But if you are mentally ill, like Tony was saying, there's EAPs, the Employee Assistance Programs. Make sure you find out who that is at your workplace. So if they're an outside agency contracted with your employer, so that you don't go to your employer when you have issues of physical health and mental health. Because your employer may use that information against you unintentionally. I have had seen supervisors, oh, she can't do that because such and such, and then the person will look sad and say, but yeah, at least give me a chance to try, or let me work through this. I may be able to do it in the future. So that kind of information shouldn't be available to your employer. It only if it's not affecting your work or your ability to do your job. If it is, then you need to go to your supervisor first and say, I'm having such and such issue and it's affecting my job and I want to do better. Then they should support that and send you to an EAP. So other than that, it's none of their business. Suppose example is an alcoholic. Then they will be looking to see if you're coming in drunk every day. Or if you are alcoholic and diabetic and you start to slur your words, etc., you get in trouble. So that kind of information is privy information. You don't have to share it with your